Bueno, muy buenos días a todos y a todas. Me gustaría presentar a la profesora Virginia Dignum. Ella es profesora de Inteligencia Artificial Responsable en la Universidad de Umeå, en Suecia, y también es directora del programa Wallenberg sobre Humanidades y Sociedad para la IA. Ella va a darnos una charla que se llama Más allá de la exageración con inteligencia artificial, ¿no? Equilibrando la innovación con la responsabilidad social. Después de su charla, como ha dicho Gemma justo ahora, la profesora Dignum va a hablar en inglés. Si alguien así lo quiere, hay opción de traducción simultánea con un picanillo que puede escoger arriba. Luego tendremos tiempo para un par de preguntas, pero agradeceríamos que por favor fueran en castellano o en inglés para que la profesora Dignum las pueda entender. Muchísimas gracias y hasta.
Thank you very much. Hi, thank you very much. Good morning, everybody. I will be able to understand Spanish if you ask in Spanish, not in Catalan, probably. But I cannot speak enough Spanish to present. Yes. So, AI, probably in your jornadas from last year, you didn't really expect AI and the impact that AI has been shown in our lives, all of us, since 1 year ago. So let's think a bit about what is this hype and how to move beyond the hype into something which is useful to all of us and not just some interesting, exciting words with no meaning. To do that, we need to start a little bit behind and at the beginning and looking at what exactly is AI. And it's an extremely difficult area to define, and the definitions of AI is one of the areas in which there is the most discussion. But if you take one of the most used definitions, AI is basically a set of machine-based systems which are able to make predictions, make recommendations, take decisions based on some set of instructions that we people give to it. AI has been around for a long time, since the 50s. I have been working in AI since the 80s, so it has been around for a long time. But it's only since 15 years ago that AI really started taking the speed and the development that we see now. And that came from a specific set of approaches within AI, the machine learning or deep learning approaches, which are based on data. So it's not anymore us that have to write down and craft all those objectives and rules for the AI systems, but the systems are able to extract those rules, those instructions from data that is made available to the systems. Of course, this data is generated by us, is collected by us, and so on, but once we have this piece of data, then the system is able to come up with the models that make the predictions. And since 1 year ago, or a little bit more than 1 year ago, we moved into what we call generative AI or foundational AI. There are a couple of names. And here is not so much anymore about making predictions or making recommendations or decisions, but really the idea is that AI is able to generate new content. And oh God, how much content we have seen AI generated is really crazy. We see it on text with ChatGPT, we see it on images with, for instance, diffusion models and so on. And this has been really keeping all of us busy since 1 year about what it can generate, and all of us have been amazed and with the extraordinary things that this type of systems can do. But all of us have also been quite irritated or quite upset with all the crazy things that these systems are doing. So this is just very, in a nutshell, what AI is about. But it's important, and in one of the introductory talks, you already hear, AI is not intelligent. AI is not intelligent, at least not in the way that we consider a person to be intelligent. Things that are quite important to distinguish. AI is able to come up with all those conclusions, all those texts and so on, by correlating data. It is extremely difficult for an AI system to really identify causal relations, and it's also, and we are seeing that more and more, extremely difficult for AI systems to distinguish between what is possible and what is impossible, what is moral, what is not moral, what is good, what is not good. It just comes with all kinds of things in the same way and gives everything the same type of value. It is also not artificial, because we cannot use AI systems without people behind these systems that are able to give it a purpose, why we are building these systems, but also all the labor that goes behind to manage the data, collect the data, and also the natural resources that these systems are using. So AI, we have to say, it's different intelligence, and it's not just artificial. At the same time, we have to look at what can we do and what have we been using AI for. And just a couple of images from images and also from text. If you ask one of these image generation systems to give you an image of a nurse, and this works in English, probably not in Spanish or Portuguese, but in English, you give it ask a nurse. A nurse is gender neutral, but the system will give you images of female nurses. If you ask about a doctor, it gives you male images. Again, it doesn't work in Spanish, I know, but in other languages it works. Most doctors in Europe at this moment are female. If you count the numbers of students at university, if we counted the number of people working in the medical professions, most of them are female. But our collective imagination still sees doctors as being male. And that collective imagination, what we think about concepts, is what ChatGPT or the other models are using as basis for what they generate. They take all what we have told about nurses and doctors in the internet and come up with something which correlates with what we have done. So it reinforces the prejudices and the bias that we have. It doesn't really generate them, but reinforces them. And because then it generates more images of female nurses and male doctors, it will kind of becoming a self-fulfilling prophecy. If you ask text, and this is just some text about myself, I can see that all what is in red is wrong. And most people will not be able to see that because you don't really know exactly where I did my PhD or that kind of things. So we see that it's also generating stories about myself or about all of us. That it doesn't need to generate this. All the correct information is available online. But again, by correlation, it comes up with all kinds of strange things. We are also seeing that on top of what it is able to generate, we are putting in this system some kind of constraints. We don't really know where these constraints come from, but we are kind of guiding the system and telling it you shouldn't make jokes about fat people. It seems to be fine to make jokes about tall people, that is okay. But so these kind of things are not generated, but they are constrained on top of the system. It becomes more and more difficult to understand how the system is coming up with the answers that it comes, because it's not just the generated and the correlations over the billion or trillion of points of data that it is able to access, but we are adding up this type of constraints, which no one really knows who is determined, why is it fine to make jokes about tall people and not about fat people, and all kinds of other of this type of examples that you see online. It's also important to realize that being able to manipulate language, which is what this ChatGPT and all this other generative AI is doing, they are able to manipulate text, to manipulate images and so on. This is a very poor proxy for intelligence. It's just a way to, it's a gimmick, it's not really intelligence. So how can we trust this type of systems, and what can we say about the veracity and the confidence that we can have in this type of systems? It used to be easy when the systems were crafted by people, so we could just directly evaluate them. We could have all kinds of formal mathematical proofs to generate and to tune the models. It became more difficult with the machine learning neural networks, but still with time we start having some techniques to understand how can we guarantee that what these systems are doing is in any way relevant and correct. It becomes even more difficult now with generative AI and large language models, not only because the amount of data is bigger and bigger, but also, like I say, because we are putting together in very untransparent ways what is generated from the data and constraints that are added as an afterthought. So we really need to start thinking about how can we evaluate these models, how can we guarantee that what ChatGPT is saying is based on, we can trace back to whatever data it was received, but also how can we tune these models, how can we modify these models in a way that we can guarantee that the answers that come out are correct. It is also important to realize that AI sees the world in a very different way than what we see it and what we expect. AI sees the world extremely distorted. Data that is around on the internet mostly focus on those blue parts of the world, and it really shrinks what is not really available into almost nothing. So AI is, by necessity of the data, very much distorted towards the global north. And it's important to realize that, because what we are using AI, and we claim that AI is a global tool that can be used and applied all over the world, and it will be, and it is being applied all over the world. But if you happen to live or to be part of communities in those gray areas, then you will have a very distorted view of yourself, because AI is not able to look at you like it is looking at, for instance, North American people. It is also, using AI, we know that there is a lot going wrong, a lot of difficult steps and a lot of assumptions that we are making as using this system. So when we decide to use or to develop such systems, it's important to realize that the responsibility is ours. We cannot blame AI for what comes out. We can blame ourselves for deciding to use this type of systems. There are all kinds of problems with the systems. I'm not really going into detail on it, but these are all problems that are well known by the AI community, and also outside of the AI community by policy makers and by developers and deployers. And if knowing all these problems, we are going to use the systems and to develop the systems, then we need to be aware that we are responsible for what we are doing with this type of systems. And the concerns that come from there is not only the issue of identification, the fact that AI only exists by chance of the data that it is able to use and to have access to. And what we are seeing now is that slowly we are moving into a situation in which data and availability of data is determining what we find as a community, as a society, as important. If there is data, then it's an important issue that we can handle. If there is not sufficiently data, then probably it's not important, or it's not something that we are going to look at. And this availability of data is very much aligned with the issue of power. Those that have the power to develop AI are the ones who are directing the direction in which AI is going, and by doing that, they are also directing the way we are using data, which data is being collected, and we get more and more a distorted view of the world that I just showed before. At the same time, those that are at this moment developing AI and AI development is being very much concentrated in the hands of private parties, very large technical companies, which are private companies, and therefore we don't really have the type of accountability or the democratic accountability over this type of companies that we would like to have, because the systems are affecting all of us in a way that many other infrastructures are not yet. And of course, we also have to look at the issue of sustainability. It costs a lot of energy to develop these systems, and how much energy is worth to put into these systems, which is energy that we then cannot put somewhere else. We also need to look at that. So why should we care about responsible AI? Firstly, because these systems are acting increasingly autonomously in our world, and eventually these systems are going to make better decisions than we make. What is better, of course, is the crux here. Who decides what is a better decision or not? But that's another thing. But we are using these systems more and more as a basis to our decisions, to our steps, to our interactions. It is important, and AI doesn't happen to us. AI is an artifact, is something that we developed, that we designed, and therefore we need to treat it as an artifact and not so much as something that happens to us, and we cannot really look at that. So it is important to make sure that we know and we discuss the purpose for what we are building these systems. And then the issue about responsible AI is basically asking the question, is AI the best option in a certain situation? And who is going to decide about that? Which values are going to be taken into account? What kind of priorities are we giving to these values? These are what people are calling the question zero. And that is the core of what responsible AI is about. It's not so much about developing the systems, it's much more about reflecting and being critical about when or not to develop further or to use this type of systems. So is AI the best option? That is kind of the question zero that needs to be at the core of any decision and any steps taken around the use, development, and deployment of AI systems. So going back to the question of what is AI, the question is, because this is an artifact, is something that we developed, the question needs to be, what do we want AI to be? We are designing it, we are developing this type of systems. Do we want them to be human-like? Why? What for? What does that mean? It's questions that we need to answer. Do we want it to be a tool? And one of the previous speakers also talked about that. But tools are also designed and developed for specific functionalities. For what are we developing tools, and for who are we developing tools? I'm left-handed, I cannot use the scissors like right-hand people can use. So who is going to benefit from these tools, and what are these tools going to be able to do? Do we want these systems to be a simulation, to be helping us understanding the world without directly affecting the world? Or do we want these systems to really act into the world and being an intervention? And in that case, who is going to determine and who is going to be affected by those interventions? Finally, do we want AI to be normative or to be descriptive? Or simply put, do we want AI to do what we say or to do what we do? Because we not always do what we would like to do. And we see that in all the data that AI is using to generate and to give us back images of nurses being females and doctors being males. So it's also important to realize that when we talk about responsible AI, that AI doesn't exist in a vacuum. Also important to realize that technology by itself will not solve all the problems of the world, and will definitely not solve all the problems that Netflix recommendation tonight. Is that the same type of energy that you want to put in a system that it's going to make better health diagnostics? These questions are not being asked at the moment. Conferences in AI are focusing basically only on the accuracy of the model. How much does it improve over previous models? No one or very few people are thinking about how much does it cost in terms of energy, in terms of data, in terms of human dignity. And we really need to look at that. Also, how are we going to decide between security or privacy? If we make a system which is more private but is worse for security, who is going to balance those things? So all these dilemmas, all these trade-offs are a large part. And it's not something which ethics can solve for us. It's something which we really need to discuss ourselves. So taking responsibility, we'll need to look at the inside of the systems, how those systems are developed, but also it needs to look at the processes by which systems are developed and deployed into society. And most of all, it also needs to look at ourselves. How much are we willing to take responsibility? There is a lot of work going on this, and all large international and national organizations have come with principles and guidelines. Fortunately, not very different from each other, but they are so abstract in themselves that it's very difficult to get anything done from there. It's great to say that they all say AI needs to be fair or AI needs to respect human dignity, but if you are a programmer which is really going to build a system, how are you going to implement human dignity into your system? And how are you going to verify that in your computer system? Those are the questions that need to be answered. So it is much more, operationalizing these principles is much more than just regulation or just much more than coming up with the principles themselves. We are looking at standards, we are looking at setups. We are looking at ways to assessment, but mostly we do need, and I think that's where you are, all come in, we mostly need to really make sure that there is a much bigger awareness and ability to participate in the discussion from all of us in general, from the public in general. And for that we need education, we need training, but we also need communication, and we need a better narrative about AI. Because responsible AI is not a choice. It's not like either you innovate or you are responsible, which is kind of the narrative that we are seeing forward happening. So it's great that people are coming with responsible AI and regulations, but at the end of the day, we just need to run quickly because otherwise we are not innovating enough. Now, if you make responsibility and regulation in the right way, you are providing a stepping stone for innovation. You are telling innovation which direction to go with innovation, and not so much just saying that we are blocking kind of things. And I have some examples from the car industry. So when you talk about the development of AI, what we need here is the equivalent that in the car industry to the seat belts and to the brakes. Seat belts don't make the cars go fast, but they make us trust cars better. The same for brakes. Because cars have brakes, we are able to speed up with the cars. I wouldn't like, and none of us would like to be able to be in a car in which you could speed, but you could not brake. No one would accept that type of cars. We are accepting that in AI systems. We are accepting AI systems that go only in one specific direction of accuracy without having any equivalent to the brakes, to the safety constructions. At the same time, in the cars, we have driver's license. No, we wouldn't like to go into the roads here knowing that no one is required to have a driver's license to use the cars outside. In AI, everybody with or without a driver's license can use these systems, can develop these systems, and can deploy these systems into the world without any requirement for certification. We do need to start thinking about that. And finally, we need to start looking at what are the rules of the game. What are the traffic signs, the traffic rules that we want to have in a world in which AI is one of the actors? And those are the kind of issues that really need much more discussion. We are now in a car without brakes, being driven by someone without a driver's license, in roads without traffic signs. That is the situation in AI. That is what responsible AI, that is what regulation needs to really address quickly and urgently. And finally, just to finish, AI is not just technology. And all what I said before is all kinds of issues that cannot really be solved by technology, but really require a multidisciplinary approach and really needs to take into account the humanities, the social science, the life science, in order to understand how can we develop and use these systems in a responsible way. Thank you.
Muchísimas gracias. Thank you very much. ¿Hay alguna pregunta?
No questions.
¿Hay una pregunta? No.
Oh, okay. You can ask in Spanish if you prefer.
Bueno, sí, la pregunta era que, a ver, es que me he quedado en blanco. Si las compañías, los datos están en 12 compañías, ¿no? La mayoría de datos
sí.
De los que se alimenta, ¿cómo hacemos para controlar que realmente no esté todo en sus manos? O sea,
sí.
no sé, algo así.
Yes. So the image where I talked about 12 companies is about health data, so that whole image is about health data. It's not probably very different for other types of data, but indeed 50% of data used in AI that is used in health and diagnostic and medicine is concentrated on 12 organizations alone. Of those 12 organizations, only 2 are outside of North America. One is the Max Planck Institute in Germany, and the other one is in Hong Kong. How do we do about guaranteeing that this data is correct, that this data is updated, that this data is a faithful description and representation of the world, given that these companies are private? It's indeed what I talk about, the rules of the game. We don't really have the rules that guarantee that at this moment. Private companies can collect the data that they want. There are even rules that guarantee privacy and ownership of the data without really needing to make that data open and clear to other ones. We don't really know, none of us, which data has gone into training ChatGPT. It has been a lot of data, but what exactly that data is, no one knows, and they don't really need to tell us what is it. So we do need to have a much broader international, global discussion about how to go about this. It is becoming an infrastructure that is more and more guiding our lives, and we are more and more dependent on this infrastructure, like we are in the road infrastructure or the electricity infrastructure, and we don't have much ways to support the openness and the quality of that data, and that is indeed one of the issues.
Hola, muchas gracias por la charla. Parece que muchos de estos problemas que estamos viendo con el tema de la IA se resolverían solos si tuviésemos una política de apertura completa con respecto, por ejemplo, al código de la IA, o al menos a las partes del código que puedan definir sesgos o que puedan definir los principios. Y también una liberación de la capacidad de crear IA, de que cualquiera pueda hacerlo y cualquiera puede usar cualquier IA sabiendo qué tipo de sesgos, qué tipo de principios tiene la IA. No sé si me... Vale.
Thank you.
¿Cree que eso es factible o estamos condenados a que esto sea siempre esté en manos privadas?
Yes and no. Do you trust better a car if they give you the specs for the technology, or that you know that there are agencies around which check that those cars or those airplanes? I wouldn't know how to start reading the specifications of an airplane, but I don't need to know those specifications or that code of the airplane to go and catch an airplane to come here today. I need to know that there are agencies, that there are control mechanisms which have checked not only the airplane, but also the whole traffic control and so on, which guarantees and makes me trust that those things are taken into account. So openness of the code, it's part of it, but it will not solve the issue for most of us. At the same time, we do need much more interaction rules, and we do need to have a global policy, and actually the United Nations, and I'm going later this week to New York for that. The United Nations have just launched the initial steps to create an AI body which will work in AI as they have bodies, for instance, for nuclear energy or for the climate change, the IPCC issues. So maybe that's a start that will make us understand and trust the use and development of AI systems without really needing all of us to become engineers and be able to read program specifications. Hi.
Thank you for your talk. And I had,
Gracias por la charla. Tengo dos preguntas rápidas. En Europa, ¿de qué manera, qué pasos está tomando la Europa para la regulación? En la comunicación científica las fuentes son muy importantes y quería preguntar si hay algún modelo que esté mejorando lo de las fuentes, porque Nos ha enseñado usted cómo ChatGPT ha errado en su biografía y se inventa cosas. Vale, a ver, la regulación. Europa tiene el récord mundial en ser la primera región del mundo que ha dado un paso al frente con lo de la regulación de la IA, la legislación para la IA, que ahora mismo se debatió y se aprobó en el Parlamento Europeo y ahora mismo se está debatiendo en un montón de comisiones burocráticas de la Comisión Europea. Se basa sobre dos pilares fundamentales, poniendo a los humanos en el centro. La IA está aquí para el beneficio de nosotros, de la humanidad, y en el otro una perspectiva basada en riesgos. Cuanto mayor se perciba el riesgo del sistema, sea porque se considera que la tecnología es arriesgada o porque su terreno de aplicación lo es, cuanto más riesgo, más garantías y más límites se le deben colocar a la hora de desarrollar estos sistemas. Evidentemente hay muchos obstáculos, por ejemplo, el tema del riesgo ahora mismo está en manos de las empresas o de las organizaciones, depender en qué tipo de riesgo se mantienen. Allí hay una serie de problemas, pero está habiendo una discusión muy productiva y consultiva desde el principio del debate, así que creo que todo esto también se va a debatir. La regulación, pues en Europa sois los primeros que habéis pensado en una infraestructura gubernamental para la observación, la especificación y la regulación de la IA. Así que dentro de Europa, España parece estar dando un paso más allá. Pero sin embargo, desde Estados Unidos hasta China, todo el mundo está dándole una vuelta a esta de la regulación. Evidentemente distintos tipos, pero todo el mundo lo está haciendo. Sobre las fuentes, lo primero que debemos tener presente es que los sistemas de IA generativas no deben darnos la verdad, sino deben darnos algo que sea correcto desde el punto de vista textual. Estamos todos nosotros cometiendo el error de asumir que ese texto es la verdad. La gente le pregunta a ChatGPT, ¿me caso con este o con el otro? ¿Me acepto ese trabajo o el otro? No. El trabajo de ChatGPT es generar texto. Texto de la misma manera en la que no generamos nosotros. Al generar ficción. No es la verdad. Lo primero que tenemos que entender es que su objetivo es generar texto correcto. OpenAI, la empresa detrás de ChatGPT, lo que ha descubierto es que nos hemos tomado las respuestas de ChatGPT como si fueran correctas. Es decir, que ahora mismo lo que están diciendo es que no son capaces de citar fuentes. El texto no puede garantizarnos la verdad, al menos nos dan esa advertencia, pero por favor no esperéis que os cite fuentes, porque no tiene fuentes para lo que hace, es generativa. Es un texto inventado que no pretende ser un texto correcto.
Hola, muchas gracias por la presentación. ¿Y cómo manejamos esto hacia el público? ¿Cómo manejamos el tema de las expectativas frente a la inteligencia artificial versus los riesgos que conlleva? ¿Cómo manejar el tema de las emociones de la población?
Sí, el relato y el rol de la comunicación es importantísimo. Ahora mismo creo que es algo mejor, al menos los periódicos no se dedican a poner fotos de Terminator cada vez que hablan de la IA. Ha mejorado, ha costado, pero lo han conseguido. Sin embargo, al buscar información sobre IA, siempre hay esa imagen azul. Nuestra forma de comunicar la IA es importantísima. Es importante dar al público tanto el descubrimiento o la idea de lo que es capaz de hacer la IA, pero también la comprensión de lo que la IA no puede hacer o no debe hacer. Tenemos que rebajar un poco estos relatos de ciencia ficción que compartimos con el público y debemos hacer muchos más esfuerzos respecto a la educación y la conciencia, pues creando a lo mejor cursos muy básicos o debates o programas de televisión en los que la gente pueda ver de forma muy sencilla lo que estos sistemas pueden y no pueden hacer. Porque al fin y al cabo, estos sistemas lo que están buscando son patrones en imágenes o en datos y usando esos patrones para hacer extrapolaciones hacia el futuro. No es muy difícil de explicar lo que hacen estos sistemas. Evidentemente lo hacen con una cantidad vastísima de datos y a una velocidad pasmosa, pero en esencia los principios básicos no son difíciles y podríamos esforzarnos mucho más en desmitificar lo que la IA es capaz y no es capaz de hacer. También tenemos que darnos cuenta de que sí, tal vez haya un problema, de que dentro de muchísimos años habrá sistemas de IA capaces de hacer mucho más de lo que pueden hacer ahora y volverse mucho más proactivos y activos, pero el riesgo existencial de ese tipo de sistemas es bastante mínimo, sobre todo comparado con el tipo de riesgos y peligros que la IA está haciendo ahora mismo, de discriminación, sesgos, problemas de privacidad. Y todo esto hay que resolverlo si queremos un futuro en el que la IA nos beneficie de alguna manera. Y los riesgos existenciales ahora mismo, en mi opinión, son más de ciencia ficción que de ciencia pura.
Thank you.